This episode is brought to you by Modal Electronics, who enable you to play and perform powerful sound with their incredible synthesizers. You can enjoy vibrant wavetable patches with the Argon 8 series, or you can produce with state-of-the-art analog-style synth textures with the Cobalt 8 series. To check out Modal Electronics' incredible array of synthesizers, go to modalelectronics.com. Modal Electronics. Dare to sound different. I want to start off by asking you, you've got a free virtual concert coming up called Oates Songfest 7908. Could you tell me more about this, and also how my listeners can tune in?
Well, sure. I mean, perhaps one of the questions we should get out of the way is, what is 7908?
Yeah, that's for sure.
In 2013, we put together something was called the Aspen Songwriters Festival, and we were looking for a name for it at the time. And as we drove into the town of Aspen, there was a road sign that said Aspen, Colorado, elevation 7908. And my wife said, "That's a great name. You should use that." And so, because this virtual festival, was kind of an outgrowth of that idea, that we kept that on there just because we could. So that's where that comes from. We actually wanted to try to do another live version of that festival, but when COVID didn't seem to release its grip on the world, we realized that was not going to happen, and we pivoted to a virtual one. And then as we were home over this period of time in 2020, we began to become very much more aware of how desperate and how really almost epidemic proportions the food insecurity and the fact that American families don't have enough food to feed themselves has become in America, and unemployment has only exacerbated it even more. So we partnered with feedingamerica.org. We thought, we felt like we wanted to do more, and we weren't sure exactly how. And we thought, let's combine what we do best, which is music and songs, which we love best, and see if we could make a difference and spread some awareness. So hopefully I answered your question as
that was very succinct. So how will the concert work? Will people be? So we'll all be virtual. So you'll be. Will people be kind of streaming in their different performances separately, or will you all be playing together?
We originally thought it would be a live streaming show, but we realized that the scope of the show, with the amount of artists we had and the type of show we wanted to put on, we realized it was a bit impractical to try to organize that. So what we did is we began to solicit and ask artists to record videos. We started in late January, and we said, just send us your video. I said, we try to make it as easy as possible, because you don't want to start to ask favors of people and put all these, heavy duty restrictions on them. So we said, we don't care what you give us, it can be an iPhone on your couch. It could be whatever you want it to be. And people, the thing of really, I'm very, really humbled and grateful is that the artist didn't phone it in. They didn't just send us a bunch of stuff and go, "Oh, here's an old video I've got laying around, use this." They really a lot of them really went out of their way to do something very special and unique. And it's really great. I was just so impressed by their attention to detail and the fact that they wanted, and of course I shouldn't have been surprised, because artists do want to represent themselves very well, of course. And like many of these events, when we started, I reached out to a lot of the same artists who originally were at the original Aspen Songwriters Festival 10 years ago. And once they signed on, in very typical fashion, when you are asking artists and managers to be part of something, the first question is, well, who else is on it?
Of course.
And once you get over that hump and you get a few big names, then of course you're on your, then you can start sliding downhill. It's much easier. And that's what happened. And the artists began to just come out of the woodwork, and so many, and almost every artist really I have a relationship with. I've either played with them or worked with them, or somehow or another we've had a relationship. So it's really a great feeling to know that my friends in the music business and in my virtual Rolodex really kind of rose to the occasion. It's really gratifying to know that.
Yeah, they stepped forward. And so, how many people are going to be performing?
I think we have 19 at this point. We have 19 performances, but we also have a lot of what we call celebrity call to actions, where various celebrities, we have the actress Angie Harmon, we have Mike Wolf from American Pickers, we have a really cool guy who we're friends with on Instagram called The Professor, who does trick basketball shots. And they come on and they basically give a little information about Feeding America, just so we have some variety. But we also have a co-host named Saxsquatch. Now, I don't know if you've had a chance to check him out. Okay, well, you need to. You absolutely need to. You will become obsessed the way my wife and I have become. He's a saxophone playing Saxsquatch who lives in the woods, and he and I are co-hosting the entire festival. And we're doing it in a very unique and somewhat comical way. We wanted to keep it entertaining and make it fun. So he and I are also, we've also collaborated on a EDM version of Maneater, which we're releasing, worldwide debut during this show. And it's got an awesome video that we did as well for it. So and there's some great stuff. Like, for instance, when I spoke to Daryl Hall about it, we talked about it and we said, and I said to him, I said, here's a great chance for us not to have to play our big hits. Here's a wide open palette. Let's do something that we don't do when we're together on the big stage. And so he played a really great, one of my favorite songs that he's ever done, a song called I'm in a Philly Mood from his Soul Alone album. And it's just a great, great song. And he performs that, in a very simple, straightforward way on the piano. I wrote a brand new song, which will be the closing song on the show, called Sonny Terry and Brownie McGee. It was a song that I wrote. I wanted to kind of tie together the spirit of lending a helping hand. And that's kind of what the song's about. So it gave us a chance, to be creative on the musical side. But in terms of the business side and the organizational side, it's been quite a journey to pull the two.
Yeah, it must have been incredibly hard work.
2+ hour show together and edited and with graphics and all the things that we brought in. A great production team from New York called Drive Entertainment to help us with a lot of the technical details. And then of course we have nugs.tv, which is our streaming partner. So you just go, it's very simple. You just go to nugs.tv, nugs.tv. And it is 8:00 Eastern time on Saturday, March 20th, this coming Saturday. And it is totally free. It's not a pay-per-view. It's completely free. And all the money generated through donations during the course of the show will go directly to feedingamerica.org. So there'll be a QR code for your mobile phone, and there'll be a URL if you want to click on that. But we really wanted to make sure that everyone knew that, no one was making money on this thing. This is all about generating money for Feeding America. Yeah.
And that's more than clear. And I think, it's great that it's free, but I imagine the donations will start piling in. I mean, some of the names there, Dave Grohl, obviously you've mentioned Daryl Hall, Sammy Hagar, Dan and Shay, Darius Rucker, Sarah Bareilles, Bob Weir, Sean Colvin, Gavin DeGraw, Jewel. I mean, this is an unbelievable lineup. It's going to be awesome. So you're performing a new song so you'll be closing. Is that when you'll be doing your music?
Well, I have two appearances. I have my EDM debut with Saxsquatch,
of course.
Somewhat in the middle of the show. And then at the very end of the show, I recorded a song with a band from Nashville with some of my guys who I work with all the time. And we recorded a brand new original song, and it came out great. So that's the closing song of the show. But I'll tell you that really the performances are fantastic. And they're a really wide variety. And it's something I didn't consider at first. But now that I can step back from it because the show is finished and I watched it, the music represents the kind of music I like. It's really a wide variety of styles, very eclectic. I mean, there's bluegrass, there's Americana, there's pop, there's rock, there's you know, folk. I mean, R&B. You know, there's pretty much every genre is represented. Country, whatever. Dan and Shay, who I've watched their career from the time they signed to Warner Nashville, because I was on the same label when they were first signed, and I've watched them develop into, you know, arguably one of the biggest bands in America. Biggest pop bands in America. Great guys, and they're just getting better and better. And they went and, you know, they could have, like, here's a perfect example. They're on top of the world. You know, they just won a Grammy for Best Pop Duo with Justin Bieber. You know, when I asked them to do a song, they could have easily just trotted out an old video that they had, you know, in the can and said, here, sure, yeah, here's this. They actually went to a house in the countryside outside of Nashville, rented a house, set up an entire video production, and did an acoustic version of their latest single. And it's amazing. And it shows you how good they are, because it's just the two of them with an acoustic guitar, and they sing so beautifully. And, you know, and it just shows you the real talent that they have. Yeah. And there's so many moments along the way there. Sheila E., who does a version of her big hit, Glamorous Life. And it is funky. I'm going to tell you, it is badass. It's really cool.
Yeah,
so,
I can imagine,
you know, a lot of these great, and some great new performers like Louis York, Infinity Song, Quinn Sullivan. These are young performers that I've discovered through mutual friends and things. And they're just great. And so we wanted to add some people that aren't so well known as well.
Yeah, it's a really good chance to spotlight these artists when you've got such a lineup of well-known people. And these, I mean, when you're talking about stripping away the production and the talent really shining through, that's why these events are so good. Like, have you ever seen NPR Tiny Desk, that series?
Oh, yeah, sure, of course.
Yeah, that's it's just kind of stripping away all the gloss and the production. I reckon if you went on there, that would be a good. Either your solo stuff or you and Daryl. That would be very cool.
I've been dancing around, making an appearance on Tiny Desk. About 2 years ago, when I had my Arkansas album out, we were supposed to do it, and something happened with our schedule, and we never got around to it. But yeah, that'd be something. I mean, I love playing. You know, I'll just pick up a guitar and play like that. You know, I do that all the time. And during this COVID period with Zoom and stuff, I've been doing a lot of that kind of stuff. You know. So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, with this undertaking, you definitely won't have had the sort of COVID boredom. Having to put this together must have just been exhausting.
I've been busier than I've ever been. You know, it's interesting because normally I would have been on tour most of this year, most of 2020. And a lot of the opportunities and things that have happened came about because I was home and I had the time and, you know, to do things that were different. For instance, this project never would have happened had I been on the road, I'm sure. And I did 4 or 5 songs for a movie called Gringa, which is coming out in the spring, late spring or fall or summer. And It's a great little story about a young girl from Southern California who goes to Mexico to try to find her estranged father. And when she finds him, it's not what she expected. And but in the best Hollywood tradition, it turns out good in the end. So I wrote a song for it because a friend of mine directed it, and he asked me if I, you know, maybe could come up with something. I sent him a song, and he went, "This is perfect. Do you want to do more?" And I went, "Yeah, I've got plenty of time. Let's do it." And so I ended up with, I think, 4 songs in the movie, maybe 5. So that was fun too, you know, being able to write to the script as opposed to trying to generate the ideas myself.
That's really cool. It's a different type of challenge, obviously, but I'm looking forward to hearing those. And in terms of COVID coming to an end, do you? Well, I mean, fingers crossed, it comes to an end and dies down. Do you have plans to go back out on the road?
Yes, we do. Daryl and I have a tour plan for early August of 2021, this year. So we shall see. But, you know, it's not up to us.
Yeah, for sure.
We are totally ready to perform, and we will be ready and willing. However, it will be dictated to us by forces beyond our control, and whatever that is, that is. If an audience doesn't want to attend a venue and sit shoulder to shoulder with people, then I guess it won't happen. So we'll have to see. It's really a waiting game, and I know that people are more than ready for live music, and all the musician friends of mine are dying to get out there. So maybe actually that's the wrong word to use. I shouldn't even use that word.
I did that the other day on an interview, and somebody pointed it out. But I mean, it is, everybody's like chomping at the bit for live music, and I mean, none more so than Hall & Oates. That's for sure. So, are you guys going to? Is it an American tour?
Yeah, it's American. We have the same lineup that we had proposed in 2020. In 2020 we did 2 shows. We did a warm-up show in Hershey, Pennsylvania, which is some place that near where Daryl and I grew up, and for some reason we always use it as a warm-up. And then we went straight to Madison Square Garden on February 28th, and we sold it out. And it was an incredible show. And we thought, wow, what a great way to kick off the tour. 2020 is going to be this amazing year. And literally, that was it. The rug was pulled out from under us a week later, and we never played again. So we had KT Tunstall and Squeeze supporting us, and
wow.
Both artists who I love. Yeah. So, yeah.
And Madison Square Garden, if you fingers crossed, tour goes ahead, will you be stopping back at Madison Square Garden, or will you be continuing on from that point?
No, because it'll be a summer tour, really. Oh, right, so we'll be outdoors most of the time. We actually we purposely booked mostly outdoor venues because we thought if there's any chance of getting in a live show, it's going to be at an outdoor venue as opposed to an indoor venue. If there might be more possibility of doing it that way, just due to the nature of being outdoors. So yeah, we're playing Jones Beach in New York. We're playing, I think it's the PC, and I can't remember the name of these venues. They change with their sponsorships. But there's one in New Jersey, and we're going to try to do our festival in Philadelphia called Hoagie Nation, which we'll try to squeeze in as well. So we'll see.
Yeah, well, fingers crossed it goes ahead. And in terms of those shows, do you ever get to a stage with any of the tunes where you're, because obviously these are big blockbuster songs, and you've done all sorts of incredibly interesting, less blockbuster things in your career. And we discussed on the last podcast that there are some album tracks and things like that are just as good. Do you ever get to the stage with the big hits where you're like, oh, I'm not feeling, man-eater this evening?
It's really a double-edged sword. Me personally, I feel a professional obligation to play songs that people want to hear. They are coming for a reason. They're coming because these songs have resonated with them. They mean something to them. And I think, and fortunately for us, we really actually like the songs we play. We don't feel that we've been able to reimagine them arrangement-wise, and due to the way our band plays them, our songs, if you really analyzed, if you took a live version of Man-Eater or Out of Touch or any of the songs, really, She's Gone, Sarah Smile, and you put them up against the record and you tried to compare them note for note, arrangement for arrangement, you would find them to be vastly different. But we are it's a fine line to keep, to preserve the essence of what makes that song special, but yet reimagine it and take it somewhere so that it still breathes new life into it. But you're not going so far that people don't even recognize what you're playing. That's what we do. And we've always done that. And over the years, people have always said, man, we love your records, but we love your live versions better. And that's just something that we've actually become quite good at over the years. And what it does is it keeps it fresh for us. Yeah, that's very, very true in terms of when I saw you. It wasn't like you'd taken, like when I went to see Van Morrison and, he'll do Brown Eyed Girl, but it literally will be some totally different thing. Or Dylan, you don't even know what he's playing. You know what you guys are playing, but you'll stretch it out. You'll reimagine the top lines. That's right.
That is just the best way of doing live music. And And yeah, I don't know whether you've ever tried kind of dropping, because I guess when you say you've got a professional obligation, it must also be still, when you've got thousands of people, bit of a huge buzz. And you're not going to get the same buzz if you pull out like, you know, some like a B-side that's great, but that people don't know. It can't be that great to be in front of thousands of people playing, and then suddenly you're getting no love.
We do that. We force an album cut on our loyal fans, and the hardcore fans love it because that's what they do want to hear.
Yeah.
But you know, nevertheless, you know, we have this incredibly good problem. We have so many hits, and we actually don't play some of them. I mean, you know, there's songs like Method of Modern Love that we every once in a while we'll play it, every once in a while we don't. There's Adult Education. We sometimes play it, sometimes don't. You know, so there's.
I wanted to hear Do It for Love. That was a great tune, Latter Day tune that I was getting obsessed with before seeing you guys. But again, you didn't play it because you've got a big.
Do It
big
for
variety.
Love is another one. Do It for Love is another one. That's a great song to bring back. But here again, you know, we've got a show that is actually just hit after hit right through, and you know, we can't play everything, so something's got to go. And
well, you've sent me, so obviously on the Greatest Music of All Time podcast, we talk to some of the greats like yourself. You know, in my book, Hall & Oates, and your solo stuff. You know, that's one of my favorites of all time, absolutely. But it's going to be really interesting to hear about some of the things that you consider to be great. And you've sent over some of your, well, how would you characterize these? Would you characterize these as some of your favorite albums, or are they absolutely your top five?
well, I don't think I could ever have a top five. I just pick them, you know, because I think what they do is they represent who, you know, where I come from and who I would, you know, aspire to be like. That's why I pick them. And Joni Mitchell, the Blue Album, to me is the absolute best album ever made. You know, obviously I'm, you know, I have my own opinion, you know, it's subjective, but I feel like it's a perfect work of art on every level, even down to the album cover. The songs are exquisite. Her performances are, you know, absolutely beautiful. I'm going to run out of superlatives. The engineering is pristine.
Yeah, there's
the
nothing.
Lyrics are evocative and poetic, and yet accessible, all the same. I really don't think there's a better album it's ever been made, to be honest with you. But you know, you're talking to me, so I get to be subjective, right?
Well, there are a lot of people who would agree with you on that, I think.
Yeah, it's very special, and you know, she's just she's one of the great geniuses of you know, modern song composition. And then I think I picked Doc Watson and Mississippi John Hurt because they're two essential influencers for me as a guitarist. If you were to take Chuck Berry, Mississippi John Hurt, Doc Watson, and Curtis Mayfield, those four guitar players, that's how I play. Except I'm not as good as any of them. So, but I'm an amalgamation of that, and that's why I chose those ones. The Doc Watson album called Doc Watson on Folkways. It just has some of his, you know, classic renditions of Appalachian and traditional music. That is stuff that was handed down to him through his forebears and things like that, and it's real, it's authentic, and his playing is so clean and so soulful.
When did you start listening to him?
I'm sorry, what?
When did you start listening to Doc Watson?
Oh, I started listening to Doc Watson in the early '60s, during the folk revival, when folk performers and traditional performers were being rediscovered during that era on college campuses. Living in Philadelphia, the Philadelphia Folk Festival started, I believe, in '62. So it's well over 50 years, 63 maybe. And I saw some of these performers at the Philadelphia Folk Festival. And I was a folk blues guitar player, very much into that, and an R&B guitar player. But I copied and learned all those songs at an early age. And I got a chance to actually play with Doc and Merle, his son. in the dressing room of a coffee house in Philadelphia back in the 60s. So one of my great, and I own the guitar that Mississippi John Hurt played at Newport Folk Festival in 1963. I actually owned that guitar. So there's a lot of mojo going on there for me as a guitarist.
And when did you get that guitar? Was that later on?
Oh, that's a whole long story, but I'll tell it to you. My guitar teacher and one of my mentors was a guy named Philadelphia Jerry Ricks. In fact, you can see him behind me on that poster right there.
Cool.
He, I started out as a guitar student with him, and then we became friends. He actually played on the first 2 Hall & Oates albums along with me. And for those albums, Daryl and I were recording in New York, and I asked Jerry to come and play, and he said to me, Mississippi John Hurt had passed away, and the guitar was given to Jerry. And Jerry had the guitar. And he said to me, would you like me to bring the John Hurt guitar for the sessions? And I said, absolutely. So if you hear me on the Whole Oates album and the Abandoned Luncheonette album, the acoustic guitar that I'm playing is the Mississippi John Hurt Guild F30 that I now own. What happened was, that was in the early 70s. Jerry then took the guitar out to Denver, Colorado in the mid 70s. He had it out there for a while. He sold it because he wanted to leave for Europe, and he went to Europe and never came back. The guitar remained in a collection in Colorado over the years. And when the owner passed away, his estate was put it up for sale. And I immediately contacted them and I told them the same story. And they said, well, you have to have it, and I said, what's the price? Because to me, price didn't matter. And I ended up purchasing it.
Is that the most sentimental, guitar that has the most sentimental value to you?
Yeah, that and my 58 Strat that I've been playing since 1973 on stage, and I'm still playing on the Hall & Oates show. And I played on pretty much every Hall & Oates record that I've ever, if you hear me playing an electric guitar, it's pretty much that one. So I have those 2 guitars. They're probably my, my A guitars, but I have a lot of other guitars that I use depending on what I'm trying to do.
That's interesting. Yeah. I mean, I guess, to what extent does gear matter? Does it make a big difference, or is it, if you're a great player, it doesn't really matter whether you're playing a kid's guitar?
No, it matters a lot. Guitars have a soul of their own, when I pick up a guitar, it makes me do something. Certain guitars make me do some certain thing, and other guitars, I just fall into something else. In there, to be honest, and not to take away the mystique, but they're really like tools to me. If you're building you're building something and you need a screw, you need to put a screw into a piece of wood. You don't use a hammer, you use a screwdriver. So to me, that's what happens with the guitars. If there's a sound I'm looking for, I'm going to try to find that guitar that I know will give me that sound or give me that feel. So I'm not a big collector like a lot of people who have these fabulous collections, but I have a very, very nice collection of vintage instruments but every one of them are guitars I use. If I don't use them, I very seldom keep them.
That's interesting. And so, because a lot of people now, when it comes to using the right tool for music, they would sort of say, right, I need X, Y, Z. I'm going to open up this plugin. And then do you think that it's easy? Can you tell when you hear records these days and it's literally all fake? Obviously the drums, it's pretty obvious when they're programmed, but with other stuff, because there are some pretty good string samples and things like that now. I prefer the idea that it's all normal, not normal, all organic. It sounds better.
There's so much available to you, to the performer, to the engineer, producer, writer, songwriter. I use GarageBand on Apple. I use Apple's latest version of GarageBand. It is fantastic. It's very easy for me. I'm very good at it. It's something if I have an idea for a song, I can literally pull up GarageBand. I have it all completely hardwired, ready to go. Have a microphone, same one I'm talking to you on, literally pull out my guitar, sing and play the song, and I've got it recorded, and I can use it as a demo or a work in progress. So there's a lot of really positive things about technology that you can use. And I can come up with a drum groove, a sampled drum groove, just to kind of get me by. But in the end, I want to take that idea into the recording studio and record it with great players and just say, here's my idea, guys. And then they immediately know what I'm kind of looking for, and then they add their own personalities and their own sound. And and I'm not a very good engineer, so I prefer to go to the studio, have an amazing engineer capture these great sounds, so I can focus on my playing and my singing and thinking about the arrangement. So that's what I did on the song that I just wrote for the Songfest. I went in there with a 4-piece band and we played it, and it's live. I mean, it's real. So yeah, I mean, sure, that's the way I prefer to do it, but I'm not closed-minded to anything. I think one of the biggest things that's happened over the years, and when you talk about technology and production, is I call it the tyranny of the drum machine. When the drum machine was invented, basically in the 80s, when the Lindrum, began, and the Roland 808 began to impose this relentless robotic sense of time to the records that people were making, it actually changed people's listeners' brains to accept that nothing less than absolutely perfect time would sound right. If you go back and listen to records from the 60s and the 50s, the time is all over the place. It's moving, it's doing this, it's breathing. Some of the greatest records, I mean, you listen to Otis Redding records, Sam and Dave records that came out of Muscle Shoals or wherever, you're going to hear some of the greatest players ever, but the time is fluid, and there's kind of a fluidity to it. But once the drum machine imposed its will on the record making process, that entire paradigm and mentality was permanently altered. So now, if you do a record and you record something where the time isn't absolutely perfect, it doesn't sound quite right to the ear, and especially to a younger generation. Younger generation have no clue about it. They just accept it as a given. Older people can I think their brains are more flexible to deal with that idea, because they've heard music that wasn't actually metronomically perfect. But anyway, I call it the tyranny of the drum machine. It was, it imposed itself on the brains of the music listening public, and it's never gone away.
Yeah, that's pretty bang on, isn't it? I mean, you'd never hear a record out of time. What's really interesting as well.
Listen to some of my solo records. We've got a few things.
Well, but those solo records sound so good because of the fact that it's proper players. But when you're talking about, because people might say, a cynic or detractor might say, well, hang on a minute, Hall & Oates use drum machines, and Hall & Oates make massive sounding records. I mean, that's the whole thing, the sound. But especially from reading your book, and also from just general knowledge of this time, when you guys were using these sound effects and these bits of gear, wasn't like now where it was literally just clicking a button. You had to be quite innovative, right?
Well, we were at the forefront and cutting edge of the digital revolution. We had spent our entire career from the early 70s until the early 80s recording in an analog format with basically organic drums, instruments, your basic rhythm section. We did experiment in the early days with the synthesizers, and we were always open to sounds like that, but they weren't really defining what we were doing. They were just an adjunct to it.
Yeah.
When the 80s came in and we were at the top of the pop world, all the manufacturers, Roland, Yamaha, Synclavier, Fairlight, developing these new digital instruments, were just giving them to us and saying, here, we got this, use it. And I can, when I listen to music from the 80s, I can basically tell you what instrument is being played. I can tell you that this was played on a Roland, Juno 6, and this was done on a Yamaha DX7, because they were what was available. So every group bought one, and every group immediately used it on their record. So we definitely took advantage of that, and then we were able to. But here again, it's just like today. Everyone has, everyone has a laptop, everyone has GarageBand or Logic or Pro Tools, but it depends on your artfulness. It depends on how artful you can use these tools. So they're
How
there.
tastefully.
It's I don't make too many judgments on things like that. I just think it's really all about people being creative and trying to express themselves in however they want to express themselves.
Yeah, exactly. But I guess no matter what the production is like, unless the song is any good, it doesn't matter what drum machine you put on it. To me, that's what the problem is now. Like the songs are weaker, the lyrics are weaker, the sentiment behind them is less meaningful because it was devised by 13 people. You talked about She's Gone last time. That was an actual experience that happened to you. You can't fabricate that with 13 people in a session.
It's so funny you said the word 13 because I was watching the Grammys the other night and they had Song of the Year and I think there were 12 writers. I saw all these names appear and I went, whoa. I've been exposed to the modern pop songwriting process. I remember I was out in LA, it was 2 years ago, and I was at a hotel that has a studio in the basement. A friend of mine owns a studio called Nightbird in the basement of the Sunset Marquee. And I was there, I was just at the hotel and ran into a manager and he said, "Oh, my artist is downstairs recording. You should pop down and have a listen." I went, "Oh, yeah, sure. Sounds good." So I went down and, the studio was dark and kind of went into the control room and there were all these people. And a lot of them had laptops and a few of them were sitting at the console. And it was just kind of, and I was a fly on the wall. So I sat in the back of the room because I really didn't know what was happening. And I watched what was happening. And all these people with laptops were inputting into the track in real time. And there was a producer, I guess maybe 2 or 3 producers, who were kind of editing what was being inputted into the track, and they were manipulating it. So I found it really interesting because it was a totally foreign way of working. And this is a really funny story too. And on the same session, so there was someone singing in the booth in the outside of the glass, but it was dark. It was pitch dark, so you couldn't see the person. It was a female singer, and the producer was asking this female singer to just vibe it up. And so the singer, they played the track, and the singer was just doing stuff like, "Hey, oh, ooh, ah," and I was like, okay, all right, yeah. So I was watching this for a while, and meanwhile, everybody's on laptops and their things are flying around, and I'm going, okay, this is happening right now. So I'm sitting there. So in from the outside comes the female singer, and she walks in the room, and I looked, and she was my van driver from the show that I did in Texas the year before. I was like, oh my God. And she had told me she was a van, she was the white vans that take people back and forth from the hotel to the gig.
Wow.
She was a van driver, and she told me she was a singer. And I didn't think
amazing.
anything of
what
it
a coincidence.
and there she was. She will keep it was so anyway, I guess that somehow encapsulates that modern pop experience.
Did you get involved at all? Or was it just like, this is?
No, I was just watching. It was so fascinating that no one asked me my opinion. They didn't even know I was there. I was just sitting there.
Is it just, do you think it's just too many people for your personal preference of working?
No, I think it's a way of writing, I mean, I've done a couple Zoom sessions during this COVID period with younger modern pop writers, and I've seen how it works. And it's okay, it's okay to have someone who focuses on a groove or focuses on a track, and another person who might be a singer who focuses on a top line.
Everybody's got their process.
Yeah. I mean, I've had some really, I had one of the most unusual writing experiences I've ever had was with Ryan Tedder from One Republic.
Oh yeah.
I love Ryan Tedder, big, huge fan. And I played at a few, kind of charity events, jammed with One Republic and done a few things with them. And I kind of bugged him to do a song with me. I said, man, come on, one of these days we got to do a song. We got to do a song. And, he finally said, yeah, he said, yeah, we can do it. And he lived in Denver at the time. I don't think he does anymore, but anyway. So he said, yeah, come on over. He said, I got a few hours, maybe see what we can come up with. So I went to his house and we talked a little bit, and I told him, I played him a couple things that I had, and he said, yeah, I said, I don't know, I'm not feeling that. He goes, if we're going to do something together, it's got to be something no one would ever expect. I said, sounds good. And so he turned around, put headphones on, and began to program in Pro Tools, because I was sitting behind him so I could watch the screen and I could see these Pro Tools tracks appearing, with all these different colors and everything. Now, I had no idea what he was doing. I had no idea what tempo, what style, nothing. All I could see was that things were being programmed. So I'm sitting there kind of like, wow, well, what am I going to do? So I said, you know what? I'm going to write a bunch of lyrics. So I had this title called Stone Cold Love. And I said, I don't know if he's going to like this or not, but I'm going to write a bunch of lyrics. So I wrote a bunch of lyrics with no regard for rhyme and meter or anything, because I had no idea what he was doing. So I just wrote a bunch of lyrics. And this went on for probably at least an hour. Finally, he turned around and took the headphones off and said, check it out. And he hit go and cranked it up in the speakers, and he had this slamming rock track, like really slamming. I was really good. And I was like, oh, okay, wow. I said, well, this is what I got. And I turned the laptop around, and he goes, I love it. And he grabbed a mic, and he and I just started looking at the words, and he would sing a little bit and I would sing a little bit. And then he did some things, and we did some hand claps. And next thing you know, we had the song. It was finished in 2.5 hours, completely finished. And not quite though. And then I said, man, I'd love to put a guitar in this. He goes, that's a great idea. He goes, well, I got to go. And his engineer came down. He goes, man, do whatever you want. I said, okay. So I put a guitar solo on it, put a guitar track on it. And that was it. The song was done.
That shows songwriting genius.
That was the most unusual songwriting session I've ever had.
Yeah, but I mean, in the sense of you knowing instinctively what to sing over something, that is part of the gift, isn't it? Just not like,
yeah, I mean, being able to come in and do it. He and I just started singing some of these words, and as we did, we realized we could rhyme that, or this needs a little extra line to make it work, But it happened like literally immediately, and it was really crazy. And I guess I never would have written a song like that had he not taken that approach. So in the end, I mean, he's a pop genius, and that was his way of,
his way of working. He's one of the best in that sort of, with that sort of production. I mean, really so phenomenally successful. But in terms of like songwriting, because this is obviously something that comes very, very naturally to you. Have you worked before with players who are phenomenal musicians who just don't have the ability to songwrite, who just don't have those ideas in the room?
Of course. That's why Daryl and I, over the years, have always had so many incredible musicians in our band, in our backing band. We've had the luxury of having the most incredible players, because most of them, to a man, have not been songwriters, but they love to play songs. Great players love to play songs. They don't, sure, there's the jam band aspect, and there's the free form jazz, idea or genre where it's all exchange, a lot of spontaneity and kind of, that sort of thing. But that's not what we do. We do music that is more form oriented and has a more coherent form. And I've always found that great players really like to play songs. They love songs. Whenever I do a session and I've got a song that I've written, and they just, it just seems to light them up and take them to another place.
For sure. I think most people prefer songs. I mean, obviously there's some amazing freeform jazz players, and that whole genre is really interesting and stuff. But I think it was Noel Gallagher who once said that is a bunch of people on stage enjoying themselves while the audience isn't. So in terms of what you recommended by Chuck Berry, why does Chuck Berry mean so much to you? Because you recommended singles by Chuck Berry.
Yeah, I just, well, Chuck, I don't even Chuck ever made an album. His singles
Yeah,
are
exactly.
just so good. They're so good. I think he is the poet laureate of the early days of rock and roll. He really is. His lyrics are so good. They're so tight. They're so clever. I put him up there with the best of the best, with Jerry Lieber, who's one of the great lyricists of all time, with Cole Porter. That's the rarefied air that I put Chuck Berry up. I use this example. He has a song called Little Queenie, and everything about that song is absolutely perfect. I think it's the second verse. It goes, if it's a slow song, we'll omit it. If it's a rocker, that'll get it. If it's good, she'll admit it. Come on, Queenie, let's get with it. It doesn't get any better than that. It's absolutely perfect, and that's just a small example of how, one of the great lyricists. And his records are great too, because everyone thinks of Chuck Berry as that, it's Chuck Berry, it's that same guitar riff that every guitar player thinks he's playing correctly, but hardly any of them really are.
Yeah.
Well, only he can play it the way he plays it. But those records are really piano records. If there's a guy named Johnny Johnson who played the piano on all those records. And if you actually listen to what's really happening, sure, Chuck's doing what Chuck's doing, but those songs are piano songs, man. The piano riffs on those songs are what really makes those records. So, unsung hero, Johnny Johnson. But I just, they
had a bit of an argument, didn't they, about royalties, him and Chuck?
Well, probably.
Did they have an argument? Maybe they didn't have an argument, or in any case, he's a big part of it. That's for sure.
Yeah. I never met Chuck, but I hear he was an
interesting guy. Another good, alongside your book, which I recommend to my listeners, hugely, one of my favorite rock autobiographies. Another great book is Life by Keith Richards, where he describes Chuck Berry punching him in the face.
Yeah. Well, you've probably seen the movie when Keith takes Chuck to do that movie together. When they do that movie,
I don't know whether I've seen it. I need to see it after.
You have to see that, because they get in some fights together about it. It's like Chuck's playing his thing, and Keith is like such a purist. He's like, "But no, Chuck, you this is how you played it." And Chuck's like, "I don't give a shit how I played it. This is how I'm playing it now."
Yeah. It's so interesting.
There's so many great Chuck Berry stories. He never he never had a band. He would always just have a pickup band, no matter where he went. He would tell the promoter, and when he'd get on stage, he would check them out. And then his direction to the band was, when I do this, when I put my foot down, we start. And when I do this, put my foot down, we stop. And if he didn't like the band, he would change keys, and he would do something like in B flat instead of C, or he just to screw with them. And, and he also would, the promoter would have to meet him at the airport with a briefcase full of money, an envelope full of money.
Yeah, otherwise he wouldn't play.
Give him the money, and then he rented his own car. He would drive to the gig. He'd get out of the car. He'd do his gig, get back in the car, go back to the airport. I actually I used to do that too, the same kind of thing.
Well, it doesn't sound like too bad a life. One final record. The great Curtis Mayfield, Gypsy Woman. What type of an influence has he had on you, and why that album in particular?
Yeah, well, I only picked just Gypsy Woman because it's just one of his great, well-known songs, but he has so many. I loved his early work with the Impressions, mostly. I loved when he got socially conscious and did, Pusher Man and stuff like that. And later on, Move On Up and all that kind of stuff. I like that too. The thing that got me about Curtis Mayfield was, if you look back into the 60s, R&B lead singers in groups very, very seldom played an instrument. They were mostly singers who fronted a backup group or whatever. And almost none of them played guitar. Chuck Berry playing this Fender Jazzmaster or Jaguar, I can't remember if it was a Jazzmaster or Jaguar, they're almost the same. And fronting a group and playing guitar and singing. That was very highly unusual in the 60s. And that really appealed to me as a young guitar player because I wanted to sing and play the guitar. And I thought, wow, here's an R&B singer playing guitar and singing, which was really, really unusual. And that's what stuck out to me. And I just love the way he played. I play electric guitar very similar to his style.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Curtis Mayfield's influence is so, on certain tracks by Hall & Oates, you can definitely tell that you were a fan, that you are a fan. I mean, he's such a phenomenal artist. I mean, stuff like Moving Up, you can see how that really got infused in your sound. John, it's been a real honor to have you back on the Greatest Music of All Time podcast. And importantly, I would urge everybody to tune in.
NUGS.TV, yes, sir.
So tune into nugs.tv, March the 20th, 8 p.m. Eastern Time for Oates Songfest 7908. And there is an unbelievable lineup of artists scheduled to play, including the great John Oates, who's with us now. So John, thank you so much again. It was a real honor to talk to you. And, thanks in the interim between you last coming on the show, I must have listened to Hall & Oates quite a few times. So, it's the gift that keeps on giving. Thanks for all the music, man. I really, I really love it.
Thanks, Tom. You're a great interview. Appreciate it.
This episode is brought to you by Tingly. Tingly is on a mission to change the culture of gifting by encouraging everyone to give experiences rather than material things. Tingly's passionate team has handpicked the world's best experiences, including travel, adventure, romance, food, wine, and more, and brought them all together in one place. Tingly gives the recipient of the experience freedom of choice. Here's how it works. You purchase a gift box, Tingly sends an e-voucher or delivers a plastic-free gift box, and the recipient chooses from hundreds of experiences in over 100 different countries. There's no expiry date on any of Tingly's gift experiences. Tingly encourages us to give stories, not stuff, to treasure memories above possessions. To find out more, go to tingly.com.
If you're enjoying the Greatest Music of All Time podcast, you can keep up to date with all of our latest episodes for free by subscribing. If you're watching on YouTube, the subscribe button is located at the top of the Tom Cridland YouTube page. It's also at the bottom right of any video that you watch on YouTube. If you're listening on an audio platform, such as Spotify or Apple Podcasts, you can subscribe at the top of the page.